I want this session to be at a very high level. I'm going to talk about different roles within the tech space, not just software engineering, but there are a lot of technical and non-technical roles, including product and business. So we're going to go through a few of the roles, and I'm going to talk about how you can improve your resume and how to navigate interviews. And then we'll be talking about how you can build a career in with tech. So let's go ahead and get started. So a little bit about me. I am a senior product manager, but currently I'm in school. I'm doing my MBA from the University of Cambridge. I used to be a head of product at Zofit AI, which is an AI startup. I was a product lead at Google. I worked with Google for about a year and a half. I was a product manager before with another AI startup and had a couple of different roles before. So today I want to talk about how the ecosystem is right now. And I also did my undergrad from India, went to CBIT for, if you guys know CBIT. And my career journey is a slightly different because the four sections that you're seeing here, I've been in every section pretty much. So let's start with tech because I'm assuming a lot of you are in the tech space, probably learning computer science. So when people talk about technical roles, we usually think of software engineering, technically front end, back end, and full stack. But there are a lot of other roles that you can target, something like site reliability engineering or DevOps, which is also similar to site reliability engineering, but in a slightly different way. People, if you have a better idea of how DevOps works, it's basically someone who's building your infrastructure or your CI/CD, your pipelines, and how you are deploying your software or you're containerizing your software. And site reliability engineering is when something goes wrong, instead of trying to fix it manually, you would write code that will auto fix different issues and bugs that happen very frequently. And you can go very deep into different technical roles that that you can get into. And there is data engineering, which is basically people working on setting up data pipelines and warehousing. Uh, and you usually work with huge amounts of data sets. So typically something like big data. And there is security engineering, which is a little, there's going to be a bit of an overlap with cybersecurity, but it's mostly on the engineering side of things. You're not working on something that's super specific for cybersecurity, or you don't have to be an expert. Any questions on technical roles? Is most of you trying to get into tech, whether it's software product management or software engineering or anything software, or does anyone have a different idea of what they want to do? I'm gonna take it as no. But I also want to talk about product roles. This is personally one of my favorite roles because the first time I got to know about product management is when I was volunteering at a startup conference, and I met this product manager from Google, and he said, "How I sit between technology, sales, design, and different business teams." So I thought for me that was really interesting because I see myself as a more of a manager, but I also want to be somewhere on the technical side as well. So I don't want to lose my touch with the technical side of a company. And that's when I started my journey about learning more about product management and trying to see how product management works. But just to give you guys a brief idea of what a product manager does is they define what to build, and the engineers typically own how to build. So there is a clear distinction between what and how. So product managers typically work with your customers. So they are the voice of the customer, where they would work with UX designers or marketing and salespeople to understand where there is more demand and what makes the most sense to build for the end user. Once they prioritize, these are the top three things that we should get done because this adds more value for the business and more value for the user. And that goes to the engineering team, and they would typically talk about how can we build this new feature, which is architecture or design, technical design, but they would be working on how can I make this feature the best feature possible. So the idea is, if you want to if you want to get into any product roles, there are different flavors. So product management is typically product manager, which is the core functionality, and you could be technical PM, where you'll be working with more with technical engineers to. So it sits between kind of like product team and software developers. So you're a lot more technical, or it is if your company is a developer-based company, something like Cloudflare, you'd be more of a technical PM. And if you're focusing on improving your business, then you'd be a growth PM. Or if you're more focused on marketing, you could be a product marketing manager. Program management is slightly different, where you'll be working more on the business side between how different businesses function. It all is also a bit of a cross-functional team because let's say you're working with different vendors. Because when companies grow so big, they need more people, more middle level managers to manage different functions and different tasks. So program manager is one of those roles where you would manage a lot of cross-functional execution and different business processes that overlap with product and business sales and marketing. And project management is typically how you manage one project. So it's more technical than I would say product or program manager. Project management is when you, let's say, own building a whole piece of software. You're managing execution of how to build a new feature or a new product end to end. And the way you might want to get into one of the product roles is going to be slightly different from engineering, because a lot of these roles would expect you to have some kind of experience so you can demonstrate your ability to work with cross-functional teams, your ability to communicate with the engineers and design, sales, and different teams, because you might think of communication as just using English as a language, but there is a lot more behind the scenes, because your salespeople speak a different language because they'll be speaking in terms of the and your design people would be speaking in a design language where they'll be more concerned about different things and different needs. So the way you would navigate these relationships and is going to be very complicated. So typically they would want you to have some level of experience before jumping into a product role. It could be an engineering. You can become a product manager from an engineering background, or you could become a product manager from like a sales background or marketing or even design. So, but I think what helps you the most is having that idea. Oh, I want to be a product manager for so and so company, and identifying the gaps. So if I want to be this, these are the things that I would need in order to be there. So this is how I can demonstrate um, that I have enough skill set to get into that role. And another thing that you guys can do is you can look out for something called associate roles. Typically, it's associate product manager or associate product marketing manager. So there are different big tech companies. Example, Google does APMs, which is associate product manager, and APMM. And they usually hire 1 year before. Let's say if you're graduating 2027, I think they usually launch these roles around October or November. So it would be helpful to keep an eye out or keep track of whether they are opening up these roles. And these are roles for fresh graduates. Typically, you would work in a 24-month rotation program, by which I mean there's going to be 6 months you'll work with one team. Let's say you're working with sales for 6 months, and then you're working with your design team for like another 6 months, and you're working with some other teams for 6 months. So you get to understand how different teams work in different functions, and then you would transition into a full-time product manager role. And there's like different opportunities like product owner, uh, and I would just highly recommend doing more research to see what fits well for you. And then moving on to business roles, these are typically more on operations or sales, business development. On those side, one of my favorite role is go-to-market strategy, which is basically when you're trying to build a new product or when you're bringing new features to the market, and you already have an existing product or existing market that you're catering to. How can you leverage your existing market while also addressing the new market that you're targeting, essentially creating a end-to-end plan that will help you bring your products to the market. So when people say they want to bring products to the market, let's say me as a company, right? I can build this really cool email application. But how would a potential user know about this? How would a potential user discover there is this product? How can we educate the users about the about this product? So this is where your go-to-market strategy comes in. You'll be talking about how can we enable more people to use our product, and as you can see, pricing, partnerships, and sales enablement all bake into this thing. And there's something called 4Ps, which is price, promotion, product, and placement. Essentially, you're talking about what's the right price, how can you promote your product, which is your marketing, advertisement, social media. Uh, Placement is where would a potential customer identify your product. So there is a 4Ps framework which people usually use to identify how they can take the product to the market. And there is sales operations, which is essentially business development, where you're trying to connect with different customers to basically sell your product. And I know there's a bit of a taboo when people talk about sales, where you're just constantly selling. But I've worked with multiple sales teams in the past, and it's not what we think of when we think of a traditional sales role. It's going to be more about understanding your customers' problems, and of course, there's going to be a part where you're trying to pitch in new ideas, or like, oh, there's this new feature that we developed, you should try it. So there are those kind of roles, but for the most part, it's about at least in tech, it's more like partnership management, where you have a B2B customer, and you're trying to understand how can you help your customer using your product and your tools. And there, when you talk about B2C, sales is going to be a slightly more different, at least in tech, where you're trying to see how could you promote your product from social media, or how can you enable different channels to enable more sales. And business strategy sits somewhere between sales, marketing, and your business teams, where you're trying to define what your strategy would look like for the shorter term and for the longer term. And essentially, what it would look like is you're defining a plan for, let's say, 2026. This is what our revenues would look like. This is what our sales would look like. These are different metrics that we're trying to address. And this is how things are going to be. Essentially, you're trying to give your business leaders more clarity into how how can you strategize your existing product to essentially gain more market share or generate more revenue. So these are the kind of roles that you should be able to join right away after you graduate from your undergraduate degree. But the only caveat, though, is if you don't have any experience, you might be pushed into some of the entry-level roles, which might not sound as interesting. But once you get to the stage where you're able to communicate independently with a customer, I think that's where it's going to be a lot more interesting than at the very initial stages where you're doing a bit of not so impactful work. So I would highly recommend, no matter where you are, try to show as much impact as you can to the company, so that way you can better understand how things work, and you can also better project yourself as someone who's reliable, someone who can be counted on, and that helps you build a long-term strategy or long-term career in that company. And this is a bit of a new role that's been popping up, because I know most of you might have learned about ChatGPT and a lot of AI buzz it's been going on. And I think typically AI, ML, and data scientist is a traditional sort of software engineering role. I mean, it deviates slightly from traditional software engineering because you're working on training models or fine-tuning models, things like that. If you really want to be at the very forefront of this technological evolution with the way things are changing, I would highly recommend getting into data science or AI and ML. You might think of these as buzzwords, or oh, it's really hard to get into or break into these sectors. But I think you have to start somewhere, and once you start somewhere, once you understand how things work, you think of this as, oh, this is not that hard. And once you learn, I think these are some of those roles where it's a lot more challenging, and it's also a lot more interesting uh, as you keep going through these roles. I think the kind of problems and the kind of work that you do is going to be a lot more different from a typical, say, application developer. That's something that you can count on. Agent architect is something that's very new. A lot of companies are trying to adopt AI into their process. So essentially, I'm actually working with one company called AstraZeneca, where we are trying to integrate AI into some of their process. So when I say process, I'm not just talking about using data, but it's also like business process and system process, where you're trying to kind of make things a lot more efficient than how they are. So this is a bit new, where you're trying to understand different business processes and see where you can use AI to kind of improve their overall efficiency. Essentially, they're trying to cut down on human capital, so they can use AI to improve the process and eliminate as much human intervention as possible. So I'm going to pause here and see if there are any questions about any of these four frontiers in the ecosystem. Again, feel free to raise your hand, ask questions. Please don't be shy. All right, I would take that as a no. Go ahead. Someone had a question. You can type it in the chat if you feel more comfortable that way. GS, don't have to be shy. Think of me as one of you. I'm not that old yet. Moving on. Let's go talk about, I think this is something that most of you might be interested in, which is how can I get my foot in the door? Essentially, how can you get a HR to get back to you when you apply for a job, right? Have you ever tried just posting a job on LinkedIn just for the fun of it, just to see how many people would apply? I can guarantee you, no matter how big of a company you are, because we did this for one of the startups that I was working for previously. It was a very small startup. I don't think barely 100 people would know about this startup. And the moment we posted a job online, we got about 250 applications in the first hour. And this is for an internship. So you could imagine how many applications, the number of applications that people would, the HRs, typical HRs would be dealing with in a given day. So if you want to be competitive, if you want to like stand out within the whole competition, where you're competing with 100, if not thousands of people, is your resume. You could also, there are other ways you can get your foot in, but a majority of the people rely on submitting your resume via LinkedIn or from a job application portal somewhere online. Is you just submit your resume and you hope a recruiter would look at your resume and give you a call back and see, oh, your resume is really cool. Let's talk about this role that might be a good fit for you. So if you want to do that, if you want to stand out in 1,000 applications, let's say a recruiter finally got your resume. And a lot of recruiters will not have the time to go through each and every section. So you should consider all your resume as a highly valuable real estate. So everything that you put in your resume has to be relevant, has to make sense to the recruiter, has to be clear to the recruiter. So keep it one page, unless you have at least 10 years of experience, or you have papers that you published, or you have something unique that you want to showcase to. Unless that's the case, keep it to one page. Make sure it's consistent, make sure it has clean typography, clean hierarchy, make sure it's readable. Try to highlight different things like that you want a recruiter to stand out. I'm just going to give you an example of one of the resumes that I've used. Oh, sorry, I think I might have closed this. Could you give me 1 second? In the meantime, if you guys have questions, this is your chance to ask, because I might need a minute to open it. Oh, I think, I should, sorry, I didn't realize you guys don't have access to the chat. Can you guys type in anything on the chat and see if you're able to text? Is there? Yeah. So sorry, I'm very new to Zoom. So, I'm sorry, I think you should be able to unmute yourself. Can anyone try unmuting to say something? Yeah. Oh, I see people unmuting. If you guys have any questions, go ahead. Any questions? All right, let's go back. So I was going to share one of my resumes. So just so you have a baseline of what I'm talking about. So I have about 7 years of experience. So I'm still keeping it to one page, just because I know a lot of recruiters won't have enough time. And what I did here is a couple of things. I'm going to share a brief overview, and then I'm going to go back to the presentation. So one, I added only a 2-line summary, just because I don't want because I know recruiters are not going to go through the whole summary if I add 4 or 5 lines. So I tried to keep it as short as I can. And if you see, most of my experiences, I tried to keep them maximum 3 bullet points. And I tried to highlight things that, that a recruiter might be interested in, because if you're scanning my resume for 6 seconds, I want to make sure you get as much as I want you to get. By which I mean I want to highlight as many things as I can, but also not too many where it's overcrowded and you are not distinguishing different points anymore. So if you can see, I've only highlighted a few things in each of my bullet points. Just so in 6 seconds, a recruiter can only do so many things. So I just want to give the recruiter as much leverage as I can to briefly go through my resume, understand what are the highlights at each experience section. And let's see. So a 6-second rule, please understand that recruiters will only have about 6 seconds on an average to go through your resume, and they will only continue after 6 seconds once they think your resume is interesting and they'd like to dig deeper. So you should give them the chance to think of your resume as interesting and give them a reason to stay back and ask to stay back and go through the rest of your resume. So you have to have those clear identifiers. You could make a point by saying, "Oh, we have AI now, and I can use AI to make my resume more nicer." So everyone's doing that. So if you have access to AI, pretty much all the other 999 candidates are also having access to AI. So you should do something beyond just using AI to make your bullet points to stand out. Which is why the highlighting, which is why the way I structured my resume, so that once you go to the first summary, and you'd get a tiny bit more idea into what am I really into, and then it gives you a chance to go through the rest of the section. And when it comes to your bullet points, make sure they are impact based. When I say impact based, you should say something like, I did X through Y, and this is the result. So you should always start with an action verb. Let's say you led something, or you project managed something, or you orchestrated something. Use an action verb and share a little bit more of the context. What is it that you actually did? You led something, and then what is the result? Typically, when you say, "Oh, I led a student club where I was just I was organizing an event for 1,000 people," right? That makes more impact than saying, "Oh, I led a student event, within school." Adding numbers will make it look a lot more better than just sharing, "Oh, I just did like A, B, and C." The ideal way to contact your resume is just using an action verb, share a bit of a context, and then the result or the impact of whatever it is that you did. And I understand most of you are college students, so you might not have as much of a professional experience to demonstrate your ability to contribute to the company. So what you can do is create a lot more credible projects. I would shy away from using something generic where or you're watching a tutorial online and you're maybe asking questions. Uh, Instead of that, I would try to actually do something that's a lot more credible. And now that everyone has access to AI, if you list something that's very simple, it's not going to help you stand out. Solve something that's significant enough for someone to understand, oh, this person actually did X, Y, and Z. So they must know A, B, and C tools, or they must know, let's say, Python, or they must know front end, back end, or something. So have credible projects that can demonstrate your ability to navigate those tools or technologies that you're trying to project. And even better, solve real problems. Try to build a portfolio in GitHub, if possible, and share the real problems that you show. If you can even host something, like let's say if you're doing a static web page, you can use GitHub Pages to host your website. So that is even better because they would be able to see your work in live. So they would be able to see how smooth your application is, or they would also be able to know that you know how to host. And I would create a a portfolio of projects that you can use on your resume, something that's credible, something that's impactful, something that would convey the languages that I'm trying to convey, whether it's languages, tools, or technologies, which is Cloudflare, or you can containerize something. You're really good at Docker or Kubernetes, any tool that you're trying to show or tell the recruiter that you have access to, or something about this. It should show in your projects. It should show that you're credible. And I said initially that there are a few ways that you can get your foot in. One is, which is what the majority of the people do, which is submitting your resume online. The other is networking. And I think a lot of people might not get through networking the same way. So each and everyone has their own definitions. Some people might think, oh, connecting with like 1,000 people is going to help me. But some other people might think, oh, I want people who can actually recommend me. So there is a question of quality over quantity. And I don't think there is one formula that fits for all. So you have to figure out for the kind of role for your ideal output, what is it that fits for you. But when you're networking, I would recommend not approaching anyone with a request. So you should not be connecting with people on LinkedIn to say, oh, I need a job, or like I need X or I need Y. Try to see where you can add value. Try to see how you can connect with this person, either in a more humane way, or say, oh, you have a really good background. I'd like to learn more about you. What is it that you're doing? Or are you working for, say, Microsoft or something? Oh, this is really cool. And I want to know how you got into Microsoft, or I want to know about your journey. So be more curious and not transactional. Because the moment you ask for something and no one's going to accept your LinkedIn request because they clearly know that you're looking for something. It's like, let's say if you meet in person, I'm only talking to you because I need something from you. That's not a pleasant situation for us or for anyone. So when you're networking, make sure you're more curious and let that curiosity drive your conversations. So that will help you build better relationships, and the other person will be more inclined to know more about you as a person. And then helping comes along the way down the line when you have enough conversations or when you build enough trust. That's when you'd probably have a decent network that is actually reliable. Or you can also build a personal brand. Let's say if you're connecting with people on LinkedIn, make sure that you have extracurriculars. Make sure you're posting on LinkedIn actively. Make sure you're posting about your projects that you're working on. Make sure you think you can also post about your journey. Even you can post about things that are happening outside, geopolitical situation, like Trump doing tariffs. So you could talk about, you could share your opinion on Trump and tariffs, and we could talk about what the EU is working on, security concerns, any topic that you're interested in. Just be more active. So that way, one, you're building your personal brand. When a person opens your LinkedIn profile or your Instagram or wherever you're trying to network, they would understand, oh, this person is not just someone random. He's actually, he's really cool. He's posting about, geopolitical situations, and he's posting about the economy and, a whole bunch of things that they might not have heard of or might not knew of. So that would put you at a more advantage for people to accept your request and to come talk to you. Right. I'm gonna pause here for a couple of quick minutes because I didn't realize you didn't have access to unmute. My apologies, but I think you should have access to unmute yourself. So if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand, react, or unmute yourself and ask questions. I also enable you guys to post any messages on the chat section. So you can feel free to send me a message. I see Shank, you unmuted yourself. Do you want to ask any question?
Yes, sir. I'm Shashank. I have one doubt, sir. One fear, sir, for connecting with interviewers like HRs and like that, sir. Can you give me any tips to better understanding and conversation with the interview HR and me, sir, like that?
So let's say if you're talking to a HR for your first round of interview, is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
So I think HRs, let's say you're interviewing for software engineering. I'm just going to take that as an example. HRs, one, don't really know too much about technical stuff. So they're trying to see who you are as a candidate. They're just trying to evaluate you for your profile. So they're not really trying to judge how your DA skills are or how knowledgeable you are. They're trying to see if you can have a conversation. And every time you're talking to someone, try to put yourself in the other person's shoe and try to understand what is it that the other person is trying to get out of this conversation. For the most part, or HRs, it's usually they're just trying to understand you on a few things. One, whether you can be a good teammate. Two, whether you're a cultural fit. And three, whether you're knowledgeable enough for the things that you mentioned in your resume. Are those actually true, or did you just write a whole bunch of things that you don't really know of? And four, they're trying to assess you if you're the right fit for the role that you're interviewing for. Because in the job description, the hiring manager usually mentions, like, let's say they want someone who's really good at HTML, CSS, or Bootstrap. HR only knows those things. They don't really know what HTML is. For the most part, for the most HRs don't really know how Bootstrap works. So they're trying to understand whether you actually have those skills or not. So the way you would want to address this is you want to sharpen your communication skills, and you should be able to answer questions and ask questions back to understand better about the team. And if you really understand what the HR is looking for, it makes your life so much more easier because you would understand they're just trying to see if you could be a good teammate. So treat your HR as someone that you're going to work with in the future rather than treating someone as someone who is interviewing you. So I would just, for me personally, every person that I talk to when I'm interviewing someone, I would treat them as if they are my colleague, and I would show them that I could be a great person to work with. I think that makes your life much more easier. I hope that answers your question, Shank.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And is DA better to learn? DA is data structures and algorithms. Vaishnavi, can you clarify your question? Okay, data analytics. I think I would say it's always better to learn new things, but it really depends on what is it that you're trying to get out of DA. Like if you're trying to be a data analytics person, then it's definitely helpful. But if you're trying to be a product manager, or if you're trying to be if you're trying to get into a different route, then it might not be as applicable. Uh, whether if your question is there enough market for DA? I think it's a complicated question. One, because AI is going to do a lot of analytics in the future. So I would also think about what would future look like. Let's say 2 years from now or 3 years from now, is data analytics something that is going to be really helpful for me? Are there going to be a number of jobs? So I think that would make or break most of my decisions. If I think if AI is going to be good enough for all of data analytics roles, then probably not. But if you think, oh, there's going to be a lot more need for complex data structures, or for like structuring your data, or like managing unstructured data. So there's like different things. So it really depends on where you want to be, and that would make or break your decision. How will the future of software QA testers be? That's a good question, Venkat. I think I cannot really comment on the future. Sorry. Go ahead, Prasid. As I said, I think it's really hard to comment on anything about the future just because AI is disrupting a lot of new things. It is bringing new technologies and disrupting every workflow that we know of. It is also actively impacting QA testers just because you can use AI to automate a lot of QA testing. And I'm not trying to say it's going to be 100% replacement. There's always going to be complicated test cases. There's always going to be scenarios where you would definitely need someone human to be in the loop for testing. But having said that, I would also emphasize that it will only be helpful if you are really an expert. So no matter what field or domain you're choosing, if you're thinking about the future, as long as you're really good at what you're doing, which means you're the expert that no AI can replace you, you have to aim to be at that level. I think that would be your shield against AI. But apart from that, I think there is no one who can clearly justify what future is going to be. That's $1 million question everyone's trying to address. Let's go. What kind of key points should be highlighted in your resume if we are going for DevOps engineer as a fresher? That's a great question. So if you're trying to be a DevOps engineer, look at what a typical DevOps engineer would do. It's usually around CI/CD pipelines, building your infrastructure, deployment and development infrastructure, and also your stage dev and prod. I would maybe highlight how so if I was doing DevOps, I would talk about how I can manage dev stage and prod workflows, how I can use GitHub Actions. I would demonstrate as many examples as I can from either existing projects or within GitHub and make everything public. So when the hiring manager actually reviews my GitHub or reviews those points, they should know that I know what a DevOps engineer is. I know what kind of things I can be talking about. So it's not just about what you put on your resume. It's also about how your conversation goes with the hiring manager. So if you put a lot of things, a whole bunch of things on your resume, but you're not able to communicate that to a hiring manager, it's of no use. You can get your foot in the door, but you won't be able to walk out of it with an offer. So just look at what DevOps engineers do, and make sure you understand, you learn what those things are, and make sure you have enough credible projects that when a hiring manager or a HR says it should be intuitive enough for a HR, it should also be complicated enough that a hiring manager would think you actually know what you're talking about. What would be major skills an electrical engineer have? That's a good question. Electrical engineering is quite a bit more different than your typical software engineering. I don't have a straightforward answer right now, but I would say actually no. I don't want to mislead you, so I'm gonna pass answering that question. But I'm happy to follow up with Vamshi, and he might get back to you. So front end, back end, or full stack experience. I personally don't have a preference. It really depends on what you enjoy doing more. At this point, I don't want to say, oh, this is going to be well in the future, this is going to be not well in the future. We can all talk about what is it that we enjoy doing, because if you have done software development before, you should be able to understand the difference between front end, back end, or full stack, or even something like data science or using Python. So it really depends on what you really enjoy doing and how far can you go in that role. Technical support engineer role is semi-IT. Is it good for a fresher to get into this role, to switch from this role? What should one learn to upskill? I think the way the job market is right now, it's always to get your foot in somewhere. But I would highly recommend upskilling yourself constantly, because the world is evolving every day. AI is coming, new technologies are coming, blockchain, Bitcoin. I don't want to throw in some fancy words here, but it's really important for you to get in somewhere and also keep learning. But what you should learn, what kind of things you should upskill yourself. I personally would go about this in two ways. One, what is it that I'm interested in? Where do I see myself? Do I want to be a product manager? Do I want to be a project manager? Do I want to be a CEO or a CPO? What would my North Star be? Once you set that North Star, you know where you want to be. That dictates a lot of things on what kind of things you should upskill and what would your next step be? What would the step after be to get there? So a lot of, when we go through our undergrad, they don't really teach us about what our goals are or what our aspirations are. But for me, the one thing that I helped in all of my career is understanding where I wanted to be. Not very early on, but I think uh, enough in advance that I knew I wanted to be a product manager. I knew I like product. I knew I like being in between different teams and managing stakeholders. So that's what I set myself. I have a master's in computer engineering. After my computer science degree, I didn't get into any engineering role, though that was probably the easiest thing to do. I rather got into product strategy because I wanted to be a product manager. And the easiest thing for me to do was get into some business role, get some experience on how business works, and then pivot into product management. So that gives me a lot of leverage because now I knew how engineering works, now I knew how business teams work and sales team works. And I also did a bit of design when I was working with some of your colleagues here. So that helped me build a very strong foundation because I knew what my North Star is, because I knew where I wanted to, because I knew what my goals are. So that's be my comment. I see a few more comments, but I want to get to them. But I also want to continue the presentation because I have like a couple more slides. All right, so let's move on. So once your foot is in the door, how can you crack your interview? I'm gonna keep this very brief because cracking interview, you can go as deep as you can, but since a lot of you are in the engineer space, but again, this is very generic for engineering people, but it would highly depend on the kind of roles that you're applying for. Someone mentioned test engineer, so that would have a very different interview structure. Someone doing a front end or back end might have a very different interview structure. So try to do more homework around what kind of questions you'd be asked, because one, they're trying to test your knowledge on technology, but in a very generic level, if you're applying for engineering roles, it's really nice to understand data structures and algorithms. It's really helpful to lead code, basically solve as many lead code questions as I can. 90% of my friends group is doing engineering somewhere in big tech, primarily software engineering, and I see every single one of them practicing lead code at least one or two problems a day. I see every single one of them constantly upskilling about data structures and algorithms, especially when they're actively interviewing. So I would highly recommend. I also personally did myself. I did lead code and I also did data structures and algorithms. Um, and systems design, I would skip systems design for now because for software engineers, it's a bit high level. So once you get into like senior software engineer or something, that's when I would focus more on systems design. But for now, I think learning data structures and algorithms, lead code patterns, just lead code should help you get through many of the coding interview questions. So that will give you enough idea about different algorithms and different models that you can use when you're solving the problem. When it comes to product or business case, it's going to be a bit different, whether you're targeting an associate product manager role, which is for college graduates with zero experience. I would highly recommend. Let me see if I can just show you something. Google does this thing called associate product manager, and it usually opens from number 10th to first. And I think there are two cohorts, one in the United States and one in APAC. I think India comes in APAC, but it's closed now. But if you're graduating in the next year or something, please keep an eye out for it. Uh, and there are different roles that you can see when it says associate product manager. It's usually someone with bachelor's degree and less than 3 years of experience. So minded, it's less than 3 years, not at least 3 years. So that way, I mean, even if you have 0 years of experience, I think you can still apply for it. Just make sure you have enough extracurriculars on your resume and things that can demonstrate that you could be a good good stakeholder, and a good you can manage your stakeholders well. And Google is one example. I think pretty much every big tech company has these roles. So I would highly recommend keeping an eye out for these. but the kind of questions they ask might be a tiny bit different, a bit more communicative. They'll be asking you about one product case questions or product sense questions, but mostly they'll ask you about things like tell me about a time when you did like expense, or tell me about a time when you had a conflict with someone, or what would you do? Some hypothetical questions like what would you do if you had to fire someone, or what would you do if you had to give someone critical feedback or say someone was wrong. So they're trying to understand how you would manage your stakeholders, one from your past experiences and one in a hypothetical scenario. What if something happens? How would you react to a certain situation? And a generic question is product sense and product case questions, where for example, you'll be picking one product and be like, how can you improve something like Gmail, or how can you improve Uber app, just Uber, or Uber Eats. So you just pick a product and improve. So that's just one example, but there are multiple product-based questions or product sense questions that you'll be asked if you are applying for product or business case interviews. And I think this is probably the most important one. How are you communicating? How are you demonstrating empathy? For the most part, when people are interviewing you, they're checking for two things. One, whether you'd be a good fit for the role, for what they're looking for with the skill set and everything. Two, yeah, can you be a good teammate? Is this person a good fit for my team? Can everyone else work with him properly? So that's probably the most important one. Even if you don't have enough skill set, people know that you can be a good, you can learn something, you can learn new tool, you can learn new technology. But if you're not a good collaborative team member, then it will make their lives really hard, no matter how smart or how much skill you are. So it's really important for you to be more collaborative. And then I think this is also boils down to the interview process. There's going to be a make or break round, which is usually the last round, where they're trying to like understand, are you culture fit? Do you have long-term potential? We basically covered some of this in the previous slide, where the interviewer is really looking for whether is this someone that I can see in my team for the long term, in the next 5 years or in the next 4 years. So because they don't want people who are jumping very often, or they don't want someone who doesn't have consistency, or someone who is not a cultural fit. And you might think of cultural fit as a fancy term for big tech companies, but trust me, a lot of big tech companies really emphasize on culture, because cultures are very different from, let's say, Apple to a company like Google. Apple has more secretive, they're very strict on different things, they don't want to make mistakes. Whereas in Google, it's a bit more relaxed, where they encourage you to make mistakes and learn from mistakes and get faster. Whereas in Apple, it's more, I'm not trying to just draw a hard line and say, oh, this is how things are going to be in different companies, but it's always a spectrum. There is no one company that is very rigid to say, oh, this is exactly how you should be. It usually depends on the team. It depends on how the culture has evolved over time, your teammates. But for the most part, companies have different cultures, and they want to emphasize on that culture, and they want to keep that culture growing. And if they don't think you're a culture fit, I don't think it's a good fit for them. It's not a good fit for you. So it's probably like just easier for each of you to move on. This is what I was talking about earlier. Is this person coachable? So even if you don't know something, they will be able to help you learn. But if you're not someone who's coachable, or if you're not someone who's a good teammate, I don't think anyone would want to work with you. Um, so that's basically the bottom line. So now you have a job. So what? Getting your foot in the door, getting a job is one, and building a career is totally different. So you should be always be able to understand how the future is going to be in the next 2 years or 3 years. What is it that I have to learn now? So when that change comes 2 years from now, you're already prepared. If let's say 2 years from now, PyTorch is going to go big, or blockchain is going to go big. If you want to be prepared for that change, you have to start learning now. By which I mean, start building more projects, building more material that you can show as a demonstration that you have that skill, or that you have that ability to get things done within that new change or new technology or one thing. So if you don't have that and you're waiting for 2 years for that change to happen, then you're just stuck there while people who are already prepared are going to go way beyond you. Where you're just going to be there, you're just going to try to learn, you're just going to try to figure out, oh, how can I navigate this new situation? So you're always going to be behind. But if you want to build a strong career, always keep learning, always keep trying to understand how things would evolve, how things can change, and make sure that you are at the forefront of this change. So if you don't drive the change, you would always be behind, and someone's going to keep pushing you uh, to fit within this new culture. And again, this boils down to the culture part, where each company has different culture. So think about long term, and don't shy away from talking about your achievements, talking about, oh, this is what I want, talking about something that even if you don't know something, it's totally okay. I think people would really appreciate if you speak up and say, oh, I don't really know anything about this, can you help me out? um, Fitting in the culture, positioning yourself as someone reliable, thinking about long term, and driving visibility. I think that will really help you build a career. So this is just a simple idea that you always have to navigate visibility, learn the next skill set that's going to be in high demand, and always communicate really well. Now, I think I added some Q&A resources. I think you will be shared this link, but let's, I know there were a few questions, so I want to jump back to the questions. Or if you guys have any questions, feel free to mute. I think that's the end of the presentation. I'm going to stick around for the next few minutes and see if I can answer as many questions as I can. I'm a 2025 passed out as a fresher from a non-tier college. What specific roadmap should I follow in the next 6 to 12 months to land a high growth job? I think that's a great question, Manisha. And a lot of people think maybe in India it's slightly different. If it's a non-tier college, uh, don't think of that as a negative thing. Don't position yourself as, oh, I come from a non-tier college, so I might not be able to crack in. Instead, if you think that's like one thing that's pushing you down, add like 7 things that can push you up. By which I mean, you can always talk about the kind of projects you did. You can always talk about, oh, I built and hosted like this project, or I communicated to an open source community like Mozilla. Or you can demonstrate n number of things that you can do to make sure your profile stands out. But for that, you need to put in an effort. You need to understand how uh, what you can do to where you want to be. So a few things that I would recommend is look at volunteer communities, things like Mozilla Firefox or Wikipedia. A lot of these companies are open sourced, and you can contribute to the open source projects. I mean, it's not going to be very easy, but you're consistent, but you know what you're doing. But if you're willing to learn, I think that's what matters the most. You can start somewhere and say, oh, I have been contributing to Mozilla for the last 1 year. How would that sound like when you interview, when you send your resume to someone and you have Mozilla Firefox on your resume and say you contributed to it? I don't think anyone's going to look at the college that you're from. If you have enough, if you're able to demonstrate enough that you have all the skill sets that you need to be successful in this role, if you have enough proof or enough, we use this word called artifacts, which is basically different things that you did in the past that would position you to say, oh, this is a really good thing that I did from my previous jobs that is going to stand up. I think no one's trying to like filter you out based on some of the things on your resume, as long as the other things balance you out. So you should be able to handle the navigation. In technical interviews, what do interviewers actually test beyond coding? I think I answered this in some of the previous slides. The one thing they do is they're definitely testing you for your coding skills. So that's always top priority. But they're also testing you for testing you to see if you're a good teammate. If you're someone that I and my team can be working with, or are you like a really good coachable person? So even if you don't know something, is it how easier is it for me to coach you, and how fast learner are you? So just basically demonstrate that you can be a really good teammate. That's what it takes. What is the biggest mistake freshers make in their first 2 years of their career growth? I think people don't really learn as much once you graduate from college, once you get into a job. One, you just think that's it, you studied for like the last 20 years of your life. Now you just want to relax, which is good. I always encourage just having a really cool life, but I think it's also important, one, to constantly learn new things, be curious about how things work, and number two, make sure you are driving visibility in the company. So just because you are a fresher in a company doesn't mean you have to sit down in one corner of the room and just take what someone gives to you. You can be proactive. You can go reach out to your manager and be like, hey, I want to do like X, Y, and Z. Or if you're not doing as much of an impactful work, you can ask for how can I get more impactful work, or what can I do to get this work, or this is my goal. I want to be a product manager in the next 5 years. Can you help me create a path? So in Telugu, there's a proverb called Adagande Ammayina Pettudantaru kada. So if you don't ask anyone, whether it's your manager, your colleague, or your team lead, they won't understand what you're really looking for. Make sure you're vocal about what you want. Make sure you're vocal about having impactful and meaningful work. I think that would be my top recommendation for any freshers. I am 2026 final year CSC department in Python. Full stack is good career. What I need to do? I think it just boils down to some of the previous questions. Do more projects, build credibility, make sure someone's looking at your resume would be able to understand that you actually know Python, you actually know full stack, not just because you said you mentioned Python and full stack in your skill set, but from the projects that you did, from your experiences, from the volunteering that you did. Just give them more material proofs that you are knowledgeable in HTML, CSS, SQL, or whatever it is that you're the technology that you're trying to get into. Just so you're not just telling them, oh, in skill set I have Python. That doesn't really mean anything. How would I know that you actually know Python? Try to address those questions. Or what should I learn to get job as a Java developer? I think the answer is in your question. You just gotta learn. I mean, not just learn Java, but you should also demonstrate that you understand Java, that you can work on Java. So no matter what your tool or skill set it is, you just have to demonstrate or show enough proofs and credibility that you're really good at it. Make sure you have a solid resume that also reflects your skills and the things that you know. Just don't write just about anything on your resume. Make sure it's credible, make sure it's logical, and make sure if someone's reading through your resume would really understand that you actually did something they're not. What mindset should students develop during engineering stuff? I think that's a great question, Sushant. I would say be more curious. Try to explore as many things as you can, because when you're studying, you don't really have the pressure of, oh, I have to find a job now that I'm in second year of engineering. A lot of people would just spend time not really doing anything productive. I think it's important to have fun. It's important to have like a really good engineering life. I'm not trying to shy away from any of that, but it's also important for you to have a curious mindset where you're trying to explore, oh, there is this new thing called AI, but it's easier for us to use ChatGPT, right? But has anyone of you thought, how does ChatGPT work? Or what is transformers, or what are LLMs? How did the evolution happen? So the more curious you are, the more you will learn about these new technologies. And it's not just about curiosity, it's also about what you do with that curiosity. I think a lot of people are just curious about very simple things, but I think we should try being more curious about things that are productive, things that are futuristic, and that curiosity will help you land somewhere. At current days, which languages should be learned? I think I don't want to say learn this or learn that, because I don't want that to be a hard line, but rather think of what do you want to do in the future. Think of 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Have a North Star, no matter what it is. I'm sorry. You could want to be the CEO of a company, or you could want to be a director of a company. Just try to see where you want to be, and try to lay a framework. Let's say 10 years from now, I want to be the CEO of Google. It could be CEO of Google, CEO of Apple, no matter what it is. It's really important to have that North Star and try to lay your steps. So if I want to be the CEO of Google in 10 years, what is it that I can do now? What is it? Where should I be in 2 years? Where should I be in 5 years? So that will give you a sense of direction on what you should learn today, what you should learn tomorrow, and what kind of role should you be aiming for. You could think of me as, oh, this guy is just joking. Who can be the CEO of Google? But my point is, you can aim to be the CEO of Google if you are willing to put in enough effort to be there. And most people would shy away from having really high goals. I would not want any of you to shy away from having high goals, no matter what it is, whether it's being president of India or whatever. Make sure you have a really high goal that sets up a standard that this is where I want to be, this is what I want to do, and make sure you have these series of steps and checkpoints. So let's say if you really want to be a CEO of Google, you have to work really hard and see where you want to be in 2 years, 5 years, and 10 years from now. That would help you get there. Next question, what are the skills to learn? I think I've just answered the question. 2026 IT market is growing or not? If I can answer that question, I'd be a millionaire by now, Jyoti. I'm sorry. I don't think anyone can predict how the future is going to be. You just have to think of, no matter how the future is, what is it that I should learn today to be ahead of whatever is coming from me. How did you prepare DSA to get into Google? So for Google, I was not a software engineer, so I didn't have to do any of the DSA. I was doing product strategy and a little bit of business planning. So I had to do a lot of product cases, things like pick a product and how would you improve this product, or a lot of hypothetical questions where, if let's say you had a conflict with someone, how would you resolve the conflict? Or if you're trying to convince a stakeholder but they're not being convinced, how would you convince your stakeholder? Or tell me about a time when you had to deal with someone very difficult to work with. How would you deal with that person? So these are the kind of questions that might sound very simple, but once you start answering, it unpacks a lot about your work style and how would you work with different team members. What are the most important skills that a fresher must learn to become an AI ML engineer? So a lot of you are really curious about what to learn. I would put that to ChatGPT because I think I might not be the best person to give you an answer, but everyone has access to ChatGPT. Everyone has access to AI. I think whatever your North Star is, if you go to ChatGPT and be like, hey, I want to be an AI ML engineer in the next 2 years. What can I do today? What is it that I can learn? You can also use AI to learn instead of asking questions. You could. I personally want to use AI to learn more about different skills and technology. So to answer your question, Likita, if I want to be an AI ML engineer, I'll start with ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to give me a framework or set of problems or resources that I can use to learn more about AI and ML. I would ask about different languages. So a few that I know of is you can learn PyTorch or TensorFlow. TensorFlow is really good. I think it's one of Google's AI and ML models. And you think about, a lot of people are working on LLMs. I would learn more about deep learning. I would learn more about transformers. How does transformers work? What is deep learning? How does deep learning work? Are there any frameworks or tools or technologies that I can use? So just do more research on what you can do. I think the important point is having a goal of becoming an AI ML engineer, and then you can use ChatGPT, because I think that's your biggest asset these days, is having ChatGPT to understand how things work, or whatever role it is. It could be a PM, it could be a project manager, it could be a DevOps engineer, it could be a SRE or AI/ML. You can have AI give you a full-fledged plan of what you can do, the kind of tools and technologies that you should be aware of, how you can position yourself as a fresher to be an AI/ML engineer. So you could do a lot of things with AI. I'm learning Python full stack development. After learning Python SQL, can I go to internship? Or so any company that's hiring you as a Python, SQL, or any engineer, is hiring you to solve a problem, whether it's short term or long term. But if you have the option to go to a full time, I would highly recommend going to a full time because that builds more credibility. The moment someone looks at your resume and sees internship, they would consider you as a college student. Whereas full time, oh wait, I'm sorry, I think I read this wrong. A full focus on learning. If you're still in school, I would focus on learning. I would focus on building because everything that you did on an internship, you can also do outside your internship. You can always host your own problem. You can always figure out creative ways to host your own problem, or you can even do that on your computer and show a demonstration video or something on a website. I would highly recommend learn as much as you can. This is the time when you're in college. You can learn as much as you can, and I think it doesn't stop after college, but this is one time where this is one of those phases in life where you have all the time in the world, and I would highly recommend leveraging your time to the best of your ability. Like be able to get the job. I think it's. I don't want to say if one particular skill will get you a job or not. It really depends on what you want to do. If you want to do SQL for the rest of your life, and if that's all you're looking for, that's a decision that you might have to make. But I would recommend learning more than just SQL. If you're trying to be a data analyst or if you're trying to get into big data, I would try to learn as many skills, not as many, but I would probably go more deeper because you can only go so much deeper in SQL. There are only a few joins that you can learn. After that, you don't have. Uh, I mean, you can still write complex SQL programs, but I would really focus on data visualization or some other tool that complements your skill set, just so you're not relying on just one skill. How do we decide between job, startup, or higher studies? I think I would say it's a personal choice, Shashank. Really depends on where you want to be in the next 10 years. If you want to be, depending on what your goal is, I think that would help you make a choice. How should we stay consistent and motivated even getting rejections? I think that's a great question. When I get rejected on interviews, I don't feel bad at all because I think it's their loss that they didn't get to talk to me. The way I see most of my interviews as getting to know more about this company or getting to know about a particular role or oh, there's this new skill that I should learn. A lot of the technologies and skills that I've learned is during the interview process. I really enjoy this because when, let's say, I interviewed for an SREPM, and that was the first time in my entire life I've heard about site reliability engineering. I have no idea what it is. But before the interview, I sat for like the whole week learning about what site reliability engineering is, the history, and how it works. And now I have a new skill that I can carry on with me wherever I go because I know a lot more about site reliability engineering than most of the films that are out there. So don't get demotivated by rejections. I know it's easier to say don't get demotivated, but think of it as what are you getting out of it? What are you learning out of this new experience? What are you learning out of this rejection? It's okay to not hear anything about the rejection. Even let's say you applied for 100 jobs, right? And all the 100 rejected you, which means it's also an indicator that you have to work on your resume. So don't think of someone not giving you the opportunity to interview as a rejection. Think of this as an opportunity for you to improve your resume, because at every stage of interview process, there are different funnels that you should be looking at. If you're not getting any HR interviews, which is the first HR screening, which means you have to work on your resume. And if you are getting HR interviews, but you're not passing through the rounds, which means there is a skill gap where you have to learn more about a particular skill that you're interviewing for. And if you are not able to crack the final interview, so you should identify where the gap is coming from. So if you don't keep track of these funnels and you're just simply applying for a million job applications, it's not going to help you out. You should keep track of these funnels at different stages to understand where you stand or where is it that you should improve in your interview process, and use that as a feedback loop continuously. So that way you're not stuck somewhere. You're not just at the mercy of the other person. You should always try to take things as feedback and see how you can improve. Any tips to be consistent or fulfill your goal? Just think about your goal and imagine yourself being the CEO of this particular company or wherever you want to be. I think that motivates me personally. And also, I'm a very curious person. So if I see something new, I would like to learn more about it. I'd like to learn more about how deep learning works. I'd like to learn more about what transformers are. So that keeps me going. So you have to find out what keeps you motivated, what keeps you be consistent. So I think it differs from person to person. So I don't think there is anything that's universal. So you just have to learn more about yourself. Again, upcoming years, I don't think I can comment on that. I think Python is going to be relevant, but mm, I'm not 100% sure. I don't think anyone can be 100% sure. So it really depends on how you envision the future to be, and see if there is anything that you can do to learn more about it. I don't have any knowledge from coding and mechanical stream. I know SQL. I don't know what I do after graduation. It's okay to. It doesn't really matter which stream you're from. You can always learn coding by yourself. You can always learn. You can start with basic syntax. You can always start with something small and keep growing as you go. Um, I see someone shared an emoji which is not kind of nice. Uh, I would highly encourage you to start learning from today. Don't wait for some other time. You could like try to form a goal. Let's say if you want to be software engineer, try to understand what are the gaps that you have. Don't think of anything that you don't know as a negative thing. Think of it as a gap that you need to fill in, and see how you could fill in those gaps with the best you can, given the limited time and limited resources you have. BBA student interested in tech while learning Java, full stack, preparing for CAT for MBA. Again, it really depends on where you want to be. If your long-term goal is to be uh, a manager or something more related to MBA, then focus more on the MBA. But if you want to get a job right away, uh, to focus more on the job application. But I wouldn't want to like focus on too many things just because that splits the number of things that you can do. So just do what you feel like. Suggestions on improving communication skills. I would say read more, speak more. So if you start speaking in English, I think that will uh, help you with your flow. But I know it's a bit hard. I think there is something called Toastmasters. Try being part of Toastmasters because they are an international organization that will help you with your communication. And I think it's just practice because most of us learn English as we grew up. But I think it just depends on whether you're willing to put in enough time to read and be confident about yourself. How to be confident if you're not sure? Just be honest. I think honesty is probably the one place where you can be a lot more confident. So let's say you're in an interview and the other person asks you, what is the difference between server and web server? Instead of saying something random, just say, oh, I know what server is, but I haven't really worked with web server, so I don't really know about it. So people would appreciate your honesty, and that gives you a lot more confidence to say confidently that, oh, I don't know about this. I think you have to be more comfortable. It's not about confidence to say when you know something or when you don't know something. And if you can project that, I think the other person will appreciate that a lot more than you could think. 4 to 6 hours coding, but third day, even 1 to 2 hours coding is heavy. How can I tackle this? Um, I don't think I get your question. Can you unmute yourself, Ganesh, and maybe explain what your question is? 25 pass out. So I'll do fresher. If not, how should I enter IT? I think you can enter IT at any stage, as long as you can demonstrate that you have enough skills and capability to get the job done. If your resume speaks to what you really know, if your resume speaks to the kind of problems that they're trying to solve, if you have enough artifacts on your resume, enough projects or enough communication, I think that's all. That's all they're really looking for. Any other questions? Programming languages. I don't want to really comment on languages you should learn. It really depends on what you're looking for, what you're trying to get out of your long-term goals. I would say talk to ChatGPT, just brainstorm for a little bit. If you want to be like, oh, I want to be a DevOps engineer, I want to be an AI ML engineer, what can I do? Um, Overcoming stage fear. I think uh, that's a good question. Usually, for me, it's more exposure therapy. The more I come onto the stage, the less uh, I'm afraid of the stage. So the PCS, QTS here, other exams are there. I still don't get your question. Are you trying to say, Ganesh, that you're trying to study 4 to 6 hours coding, uh, but third day even 1 to 2 hours? I'm sorry, if you can unmute yourself and clarify a little bit, that would be nice. As a fresher, can we do non-IT jobs in IT companies? Oh, I just shared about the business roles, product roles. These are not software engineering roles, but are within the IT companies. I would highly recommend exploring different roles within a company. Not just don't just stick to software engineering. Try to explore what strategy can be, what go-to-market can be. I think there are a lot more roles in IT companies than just IT roles. Will there be future jobs? I don't really want to comment on the future.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, I'm practicing every day at least 3 to 5 hours minimum. So again, I'm starting also 2 to 3 days or 3 to 4 days. I'm continuously practicing 3 to 5 hours. But after some days, like one particular day, it's hard to me learning new coding. So how to
Are
tackle
you
this?
are you talking about are you learning the same thing or are you trying to learn something different?
No, different methods. So I have timetable. So according to timetable, I'm covering.
I think that's just a one way of learning. I would recommend being more consistent and keep doing the cycle as many times as you can. So eventually, you will figure out how to navigate the situation. But if you think of this as, oh, it's hard for me right now, so I'm going to pause, you're never going to move forward. Even if it's hard, just keep doing it again and again. So eventually, it will create a pattern for how you learn, because different people learn things differently. So you have a pattern for learning, I have a pattern for learning. I think it's a matter of figuring out what works the best for us to learn for each of us individually, and that will probably help you the most.
Yes. Is there any other exams like TCS and QT, like conducting? How TCS conducting? Is there similar exams? Code Vita, like that?
Unfortunately, I'm not really familiar with the tech space as much. Sorry, Ganesh.
Sir, did you have any structure like how to crack the TCS and QT?
No, again, I'm not really familiar with the exams you're mentioning, so I won't be able to help you. But I don't know if Vamshi, are you in the call? Sorry, Vasant. If
Yes,
Vasant
sir.
has any, if you have any comments or suggestions, Vasant. But it was really nice talking to you guys. If you have more questions, please feel free to reach out to Vasant. I will try to answer as many questions as I can. But hopefully, if you enjoyed this session, I will likely see you some other time in the future. If not, you guys have a good rest of your day. I know it's a weekend. I do appreciate you guys joining on Saturday. So thank you for that. Thank you, Vasant. I think I'm going to have to hop off. But if there is anything, please feel free to follow up with me. But if not, you guys have a good rest of your day. See you, everyone.